You ever look out your window one morning and feel like the world's gone sideways while you were sleeping? That was me. Boots sinking in damp earth, watching a slick of oil winding its way between jagged stumps where my trees used to stand. 15 years. I'd waited to buy this slice of woodland, watched it grow like a child you're proud of, and now it looked like a fresh graveyard with every trunk bleeding sap, the silence louder than chainsaws, not a tire track or footprint in sight. Thing is, they thought I'd bow my head and walk away. But what they didn't know was I'd buried something deeper here than roots. They pulled up my forest, but I had a different plan, one that involved flipping the script on them for every leaf they took. I guess I should back up a sec, introduce myself. Name's David Mitchell, 42, quiet. By nature, never felt the need to brag about what I do. Federal environmental inspector, now retired. But that's a card I kept close to my chest. The day I moved in, a neighbor, Frank, knocked on my door with that kind of cautious look you only see in people who've lived under bad management too long. He said, "Just watch out for Margaret Sullivan, the HOA president. She thinks she's running the town." I brushed it off, figured how bad could it be. Turns out I was about to get an education. Next morning, I'm standing on my porch, mug of coffee going cold, just staring at what used to be a lush stand of trees gone overnight, like someone snapped their fingers and erased 30 years. I didn't need a sign to know who'd done it. So I walked across the street to Margaret's place, and the minute she opened the door, that tight smile told me everything. "Oh, you must be the new owner," she chirped. Hands clasped, all sweetness and fake concern. "Thought you'd appreciate us tidying up that messy woodland. Those trees were just dragging everyone's property values down." "You know what I mean." She handed me this copy of HOA regulations. Smudged, barely readable, swore up and down. She had full authority to do what she did, that it was for the greater good. She even said, when you join a managed community, you make sacrifices for everyone. That's when I knew I was dealing with a pro. I tried to keep it civil. Told her, actually, I'd like to see who signed off on this. Did the board vote? Any public notice? Her smile slipped just for a second. "Oh, honey, that's not how we do things around here." She slid some papers at me, if you could call them that, and told me new folks should learn to fit in or they'd make life hard on themselves. I walked back home feeling that itch between my shoulder blades that always meant trouble was coming. 3 days later, an official letter shows up in my mailbox signed in big loopy script. Margaret, of course, accusing me of planning unauthorized plantings, being uncooperative, demanding I report for compliance counseling. Yeah, that happened. The rules they quoted, never seen those in any HOA charter. And believe me, I've seen a few. But the kicker came a week later, a certified letter with a $2,500 bill for landscape remediation and aesthetic violation penalties. They said my debris was an eyesore. I hadn't touched a thing. The phone rings and it's Margaret herself, voice gone cold and businesslike. None of that earlier sugar. She lays it out. "You owe for the cleanup your trees caused. Fines are mandatory." I try to stay calm. Point out, I never authorized removal, never made any mess. She laughs real nasty this time. "Living in our HOA means following our rules. If you don't like it, you can move. But as long as you're here, you'll pay up." I hung up, knowing she was just getting started. It only got worse. I started digging property records, old survey maps, even the county clerk's files. Meanwhile, Margaret went nuclear emergency HOA meeting flyers on every doorstep about the Mitchell problem, claiming I was out to destroy neighborhood harmony. At the meeting, she stood up like some prosecutor, called me a troublemaker, accused me of contempt for authority, threatened lawsuits and government investigations if I didn't apologize, and promised never to plant a tree over 6 feet tall. 6 feet. You can't make this up. Sitting there feeling every eye on me, I decided enough was enough. I stood up, looked her in the eye and said, "Mrs. Sullivan, you've made a very big mistake, and I'm going to prove it." The next 48 hours, my house turned into mission control. Legal docs, survey maps, emails to old colleagues, calls to environmental agencies. I found out real quick those trees, every one of them was on my property, 100% outside any HOA jurisdiction. That patch of woods Margaret had ordered raised contained protected species too. She'd just trampled state and federal law with both feet. The HOA rules she kept quoting figments of her imagination, not in any real charter. And those fines total fiction. Here's where the twist comes in. I wasn't alone. First surprise, James Sullivan, Margaret's own husband. One evening, I see him fiddling with his old Ford in the driveway and we get to talking. Turns out, he's as fed up as anyone says Margaret makes decisions without consulting a soul, not even him spends HOA money like it's her own. James gives me access to records, showing not only had Margaret forged board signatures, but she'd paid for the tree service over 20 grand with HOA funds, all without approval. Then there's Linda Harrison, retired court clerk 3 doors down. She's been quietly documenting every sketchy thing Margaret's pulled for 2 years, financial mismanagement, procedural violations, all of it tucked away in neat folders waiting for the right moment. The last piece of the puzzle, Greenwood Tree Services, the company that did the actual cutting. I called up Pete, the owner, explained the situation. Once he knew who I was and what I used to do, he sang like a canary. Margaret paid in cash, claimed emergency authority, waved letterhead around like a badge, never showed proof of ownership. He admitted they should have checked. The money came straight from the HOA account. 2 weeks later, Margaret called a final resolution meeting, brought in a lawyer. The property management rep probably thought she'd win by sheer force. The room was packed. Margaret strutted up front, laid out charts and documents, declared me a threat. A violator demanded I apologize or face immediate legal action. She asked the room, "What's your decision, Mr. Mitchell?" I stood up, slow, heart steady, and laid out every piece of evidence, survey maps, legal findings, certified arborist reports, proof of protected species destroyed, signed affidavits from James and Linda bank records showing HOA funds misuse, even Pete's confession from the tree service. Then I laid out my badge from 15 years of federal inspections and told them plain as day I've spent my career investigating exactly this sort of abuse and fraud. Margaret didn't just break HOA rules, she broke the law. And tonight, you all get to decide who you want running this community. The room went dead silent. James stood up, voice trembling but clear, said, "I second a motion of no confidence." Margaret's abused her authority for years. One by one, people found their voices, old Frank leading the charge for a vote. When it was done, 42 people voted Margaret out, only 3 abstained. I figured that was the end, but Margaret, well, she had one last card. As she was gathering her things, she blurted out wild-eyed, "You think you've won? That land of yours was all that stood in the way of a $50 million resort. I was consulting for the developer. You're too stupid to realize what you've cost this community." The whole room just stared. Margaret had handed everyone a complete confession of conspiracy and fraud. Legal wheels turn slow, but when they bite hard. Margaret ended up with lawsuits from every direction, had to pay me $52,000 in damages, lost her right to manage anything for 5 years. Did 200 hours of community service planting every single tree she'd destroyed. Neighbors watched her every Saturday, sweat dripping mud on her knees, replanting saplings she'd once called messy. The resort dead in the water after a federal probe exposed bribery all over the place. Margaret's marriage crumbled. She lost her real estate license, had to move out of the neighborhood she'd once ruled with an iron fist. Linda got elected HOA president and started reforms. Every big expense now got a vote, finances open to all monthly reports, a newsletter, real democracy for the first time. The best part, that patch of land Margaret called a blight became a symbol. With the court award, I worked with environmental groups, neighbors, even school kids to build a new forest, fruit trees, walking trails, a little pond full of frogs and birds. We called it Mitchell's Grove, where justice prevailed. Linda had a sign carved special for the entrance. Every day, neighbors bring their kids, walk the trails, learn what it means to fight for what's right. Old enemies became friends. James designed an irrigation system. Frank hosted a barbecue to say sorry for doubting me. Funny thing is, sometimes you have to lose everything to see what a community's really made of. The forest Margaret tried to wipe out is thicker, greener, and more alive than ever. And every morning when the sun shines through those young trees and I hear laughter, I remember standing up for what matters is always worth it, no matter how many people tell you to sit down. So let me ask, if you were in my shoes, would you have fought or just rolled over? Where do you draw the line when it's your home, your land, your community? Drop your thoughts below. Let's hear what justice means to you.